Disclaimer, I will not be accepting any criticism for the books that I list off today. If you want to fight it with yourself, you can do that in the comments. Hi, I'm Jaylene. Welcome back to my channel where we turn every page into a journey. This video actually got the idea from a booktuber that I follow. Her name is Shaughnessy. I saw her do this video today and I decided, no, why not? So I took a majority of the questions that she used in her video and I'm going to be using them in mine, and I may have put a little twist on some of the questions. So majority of them are identical. Without further ado, let's begin. Question number 1 is a book that I would like to erase from my memory forever. And I have to say it is a book called A Throne of Shadows by Tessanja Odette. I believe that's how you pronounce her name. The only way I came across this book was I was scrolling on Kindle Unlimited app and I was looking for a fantasy book or fantasy series that I hadn't seen anyone read before, and I came across this title, so I just downloaded it and decided to read it. From what I can remember, this is book 1. I believe it's a 2 or 3 book series. I didn't really look into it because I stopped after book 1. But from what I remember, it's about a young girl. She is a princess in some sort of castle or whatever the fuck, and she is looking for someone to marry. Of course, back in the day, there was arranged marriages, and she didn't want to marry the gentleman that her father wants her to marry, so she hosted kind of like a Hunger Games type of situation where there's 3 or 4 men that are fighting for her love basically, and she sends them on a nearly impossible task to find these enchanted unicorns that were roaming the earth, I guess you could say. So she sends these men on a voyage to find these magical unicorns, and they actually did end up finding some. I really didn't pay attention to the plot line. I just wanted to get through that book, and I should have DNF'd it, but I didn't. Shame on me for doing that. But I finished the first book and it was anticlimactic in my opinion. I didn't feel like reading the rest of the series, and just reading about magical unicorns is not my forte. A series that I am surprised by in a good and bad way. I will say the first one in a good way, I was surprised by the Mind F series by St. Abbey. I was recommended this book by some of my mutual friends on TikTok and I was not disappointed at all. Although it is a 5-book series, and altogether when you buy the series that's in one book, it can be pretty thick, but in that one book it's broken up into 5 different books. This series was amazing. If you've never heard of the Mind F series, which if you haven't, you may be living under a rock. However, it's about a female main character. I can't remember her name right now, sorry. She is a serial killer, unaliver, whatever you want to call her, and she's pretty much going around unaliving people that have done her wrong in her life. And the MMC is a detective that is on the search to find the serial killer, who is the female main character. They don't know about it until later in the series, but it's kind of like a love story, bad girl, good guy romance, and you follow along the timeline, the dual point of view of the FMC and the MMC, and it's a crazy ride. It's very gory, it's very bloody, but if you don't mind things like that, then you'll definitely have to read this book. A book that I was surprised by, and not in a good way, was Phantom Limb by Lucinda Berry. Just because I did not enjoy this book by Lucinda Berry does not mean all of her other books are not good. It's just this one was not what I was expecting. It was actually the first book that I read from her, and it left a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth, but I'm not gonna give up on her yet. Follow the story of these twin girls who grow up in a bad environment with their mom. Their mom put them in terrible situations as far as SA and living in not good environments that are for children. So you follow them throughout their teenage lives and how they go about living life, and a tragic incident happens with one of the twins and the other one gets sent to the psych ward, and she wakes up in the psych ward and has no recollection of what happened to her sister. So you follow along with the main character, and she's trying to recall all the events from that tragic event. And the plot was good. It was just very it was just very easy to poke holes into the plot, and I knew what was going to happen before it even happened. If you do happen to read this book, make sure to read the trigger warnings because it does have to do with sexual assault. It can be triggering for some people who may have experienced that or know someone who has experienced that in the past. The longest and shortest books that I read in 2024. The longest book was House of Earth and Blood in the Crescent City series was the longest book that I read this year, and I wasted every minute of it because I did not like that series at all. I'm not even gonna get too much into that book because I'll be talking about it later because there's another question that has to do with that book. But the shortest book that I read was Murder at the Ruby Hall by Nita Prose. Pretty much at the beginning of the book, someone dies in this theater and you're pretty much following along the short story of trying to figure out who the murderer is because the murderer is still in the hall with other people. That one was pretty straightforward. I already knew who the killer was before the plot twist even happened, but it was a short story, only 27 pages I want to say. And it was quick, easy, little palate cleanser if you want something quick to read. The most emotional book I read was To Touch a Reaper by R.R. Mangold. I actually just read this book last week. She sent me a digital copy to download on my Kindle and I read it. It is a very cute but sad and touching book. You follow along the story of Mila, who is the female main character, and she is a reaper, so obviously you know what reapers do. They go around collecting souls and taking people to the afterlife. You also follow along the main male character. His name is Jimmy and he works at a hospital. Now Jimmy is at work one day and he goes into one of his patients' room and he's able to see Millie inside of the child's room. Obviously for a reaper, you're not supposed to be able to see her. So he was able to see her. Everything that he could do with a human who was there in physical form, he could do with Millie as a reaper. And that's never happened before. It's kind of like a forced proximity paranormal romance book. It is so good. I was laughing throughout the entire book because the banter between Millie and Jimmy was so funny. And obviously from an outsider's point of view, if you see a guy talking to himself and like holding hands with something that's not there, you're gonna think he's crazy. And even kissing Millie in public had me laughing because obviously you're gonna look insane if you're talking to an imaginary person that's there. You can see that they're there as far as Jimmy, but from an outsider's point of view, you're talking to thin air. The way the book ended, it was bittersweet and it was really emotional. I got a little teary-eyed, a little jerked inside, but it was really good, really funny, and it's on Kindle Unlimited, so you have to make sure to read it. Happiest book I read was Supersized Bubblegum by E.A. Noble. She too is an indie author just like R.R. Mangold, and this book had me dying. You follow along the story of four best friends who of course are supersized, hence the name of the book. Of the four best friends, you have one that is the IT nerd. She loves anything tech related. Another one pretty much just loves to eat. She loves to snack, eat on anything that she can. Third one is one that just got out of a really bad relationship and she has an ex-boyfriend who is just hounding her and will not leave her alone, even though she does not want to get back with him. And the last one, she's more of like the smaller person of the group, even though they are all still plus size. And one night they all decided to go to the local store in their neighborhood to buy this bubble gum that has not been released in about 10 years, I believe. When they enter into the convenience store, a crazy event happens and one of the friends gets kidnapped. Now the friends have to go on a voyage and a journey to help find their best friend, and they have to get help from unexpected people that they didn't think they would come across. Follow along the story of these girls that eat magical bubblegum that give them superpowers in order to help save their friend. It's really funny. This book is on Kindle Unlimited. It only has very small reviews on Goodreads, so make sure to go read this book because you will be laughing. My favorite series of the year, I said this book before, but it's the Mind F series by S.T. Abbey. And the second series is the Fallen series by Gabrielle Sands. Now the Fallen series is a dark romance series that has 4 books within. These all can be read as standalones, but they all have intertwined people that you will see within each book, if that makes sense, whether they're related through marriage or by blood. We all know how dark romance books are, so you get the gist of it, whether it's about the crime mafia or about smuggling some stuff. I will tell you about the first book because I do remember that one the most. It is about a female main character. You follow along her story. She's a part of a very known mafia family, And of course, with that type of world, you have a father who wants to marry off her daughter, which she did get married. Now, her husband is a piece of garbage, and he does some very awful things to serve her dad. And those things have to do with unaliving people in their actual home. She doesn't want to be a part of this lifestyle, so she decides to pack up her things without him knowing and flee the country. The prettiest cover has to go to Rhythms Blues by Kimberly Brown, hands down. This cover is so pretty. I love the color scheme. The woman on the cover is a baddie, and the storyline is even better. You follow along the main character. Her name is Rhythm. She is somewhat dating, in his eyes, a rapper that is well known. Of course, you know how the lifestyle is for the music industry. You know, they have groupies and all these women that want to be by their side, even though they have a whole good woman at home. So that is the case for Rhythm. She is a great woman to her man, but he does not like to claim her out in, you know, society's eyes. She gets tired of it and she decides to leave him. I did mention that he is in the music industry, so a new guy that Rhythm decides to click up with without knowing is the producer of her now ex-boyfriend. So you kind of see a love triangle situation happen, but Chance, I believe that was his name, he's a really good guy, and you'll see what happens in the book because it's crazy. And it reminded me a little bit of Love and Hip Hop, and I said this in one of my TikToks. It was giving Jocelyn Hernandez and Stevie J vibes because of the things that happen inside the book. I'm not going to spoil anything, but it's funny. In my opinion, the most underrated book that I read this year, for sure, Demon's Dreams by Elle Kaysen. And don't let the long book deter you or distract you from reading it and picking it up, because you will not regret it. I often don't reread books, but if I did have the time to read a book over again, it would be this one. Demon's Dream is an urban romance, street romance, whatever you want to classify the book as. It's an amazing read. It is a long book, but you will not feel like it is nearly 700-800 pages long. Demon is a type of guy that you will fantasize because of the lifestyle he has. Obviously, you probably won't want this man in real life, but he's a thug, he's a real one, and Demon gets down with the business. The female main character is a part of a very well-known family. She's the type of person that wants to be a people pleaser, and she likes to fix everything and everyone's problem within her family. Now, her brother does something despicable in her father's eyes, and she feels like it's her responsibility to fix his problem. So she has to spark up a deal with a gentleman named Demon. His real name is Damien, but the streets call him Demon, for 30 days in order to fix the issue that her brother started. Now, the gentleman, Damon, whatever you want to call him, he has free range with her. He can do anything with her, to her, and she has no say in it. If you can pick up what I'm putting down, you have an idea of what you're going to be reading. I had to put a couple books in this category because there's a lot of underrated authors, specifically indie authors, that don't get the hype that they deserve. But the second book is Blood at the Root. This is a magical HBCU read, and it is out of this world great. I could imagine everything that was happening in this book. Back when I read this book, I believe in the summer, I did a tandem read with the audiobook and with the physical book on my Kindle. I typically don't do that, but I saw the book on my Spotify, so I said, you know, I'll just read it. And it was a great idea. I don't know the narrator of the audiobook, but he did a great job with the sound effects, the dialect in his voice, and the way the author wrote this book is kind of like you're talking to your cousin or your good friend. Like, it's very loose, if that makes sense. You're able to just freely talk without feeling like you have to formally talk within a book. A lot of secrets were told in this book, and family that you so-called family are not always the greatest people to call family, if that makes sense. The third most underrated book is The Secret World of Maggie Gray. This too is a magical HBCU read, and I could see this being adapted into a TV show or a series. The similarity between The Blood at the Root and The Secret World of Maggie Gray is that the main characters don't realize that they have superpowers within them until they are put into situations where the superpower comes out of them unknowingly. The most overrated series or book that I read Unfortunately, it was the Crescent City series and I wasted so much time reading that. The first book I didn't have too much of a problem with. I found it a little difficult to start because it jumped into a scene that you had no idea was going on until you read 30 or 50 pages into the book. Then you kind of figure out the scene that was going on and the people that were involved. And then later on in the book, that's when the angst and the action started to pick up and it started to make more sense, and that's when I enjoyed it. I understand with fantasy books, they sort of have to be long because they need time to build a world and for you to understand the characters that are being developed throughout the book and in the series. But I feel like with this series, she took way too long for any action to happen. I feel like there was a lot of scenes within the book that did not need to be in there. There was a lot of fluff that took up a lot of my time, and it could have been cut much shorter with more action back to back to back. The problem that I also had was book 2. That one was just terrible. It was terrible in my opinion. I stopped it probably, no lie, 10 times. I stopped reading the book 10 times. And I think it took me about 2 weeks to finish the second book. It was dragging on. The plot I no longer cared about. The characters I did not care about, and I'm not gonna read the third book. If I do have any interest in that, I'll probably just watch a spoiler or just a quick snippet of what goes on in the third book, but I probably won't even do that. I read this at the beginning of the year, probably January or February, and I really haven't thought about the book since or to continue the series. Last question is an auto by author that I found this year, and I will say this till I am blue in the face. Octavia Grant is my favorite author that I have discovered. She is an indie author who writes mostly novellas, so they are very short stories, but they're the most unhinged, craziest shit that I have ever read. She gets straight to the point when she writes her book. She will kill off any characters that are important. I don't know how she comes up with these storylines or these plot lines, but she will have about 3 plot twists within a book and you won't see any of them coming. I've read a majority of her backlist. I know she has quite a few books that I still haven't read, but I'm excited to pick up all of them, and they're mainly on Kindle Unlimited. I actually just won a giveaway on TikTok. I had mutual friends that had started a page called Pretty Girls Do Read, and I won their giveaway on day 6 of Bookmas. I can't wait for the package to come in the mail so that I can open it and show you guys. But if you want to show Octavia Grant some love, if you want to show Pretty Girls Do Read any love on TikTok and Instagram, please make sure to click the link down below and I'll post their TikTok handle in the description. That is my end of the year book tag. If you have any good questions that you want to leave down in the comments, please let me know and I will answer anything. Make sure to go leave Shaughnessy some love on her YouTube. Subscribe to her channel because she posts very good long form content if that's what you're into. If you enjoyed my video today, make sure to subscribe, like the post, comment, share, do whatever you have to do, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.